In a world where technology is rewriting the rules at lightning speed, disruption is not coming. It's already here. The question is, are you ready? Welcome to Tech Week, your insider's guide to the digital revolution transforming business policy and innovation in the Philippines and beyond. I'm your host, Jack Madrid. We're cutting through the noise to bring you the real stories shaping our future. We're talking to the risk takers, the game changers, and the architects of tomorrow. Unfiltered and straight from the source. This is not just tech news, this is a roadmap to what comes next. This is Tech Week, and this is how we decode the future. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tool. It is changing the way we work, the way we create, and how we compete in today's fast-moving world. But now, there is a new kind of AI on the rise, Agentic AI. Unlike traditional AI that waits for commands, Agentic AI takes the initiative. It can make decisions and act on its own. And that is a game changer. But it also opens up exciting new possibilities. But it also raises big questions about ethics, safety, and who really is in control. In our last conversation with Doc Ligot, we talked about what Agentic AI is and why it matters. Today, we are taking that discussion a little bit further. Right now, more and more Filipino organizations and businesses are starting to use Agentic AI to boost productivity and to spark innovation. But at the same time, there is also a growing push to make sure that we use this technology responsibly, from ethical guidelines to training programs that keep humans in the driver's seat. With us again is someone leading that charge. Doc Ligot is the chair of AI Ethics and Safety at the Philippine AI Business Association. He has been helping organizations navigate this next frontier with clarity and care. Let's welcome back Doc Ligot to the show. Doc, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again, Jack.
You know, the last time you were here, Doc, you explained what Agentic AI is. Can you give us an update on the current landscape? Let's start with the Philippines. And are local companies now starting to adopt Agentic AI? Or is it still being explored at this time?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, as I keep saying, on an individual level. I mean, maybe to clarify, everyone's using an agent already. If you're using a large language model, you are in fact using an agent. But you may not be using it in an agentic manner. So what does that mean? If you, strictly speaking, agentic AI is really process. You have a series of process flows to accomplish a task. And actually the agents or the models do that for you. So in terms of individual adoption, it's actually quite prevalent. Everyone using ChatGPT may not realize they're using an agent. But as far as companies are concerned, it's only the large, let's say, talk about BPOs, for example, who have seriously started to invest in agentic technology, only because, maybe they have a lot to gain in terms of productivity and efficiency. For the rest of the business landscape, I think everyone is still not wait and see, but more of exploration, trying to figure out, okay, how does this agentic thing help me? That's kind of the state of play.
Now, beyond the large enterprises and conglomerates, how are local entrepreneurs, freelancers, or SMEs beginning to start the usage of Agentic AI in their operations or in their creative work? Are there any specific examples, where Agentic AI is already making an impact?
Yeah. I would say maybe the top 3 use cases, it's still content. If you're doing a marketing workflow, doing a content creation workflow. But unlike in the past when Gen AI made a debut, it was primarily text, chatbot kind of content creation. Now, an agentic workflow, can render an entire video end to end out of a prompt. They can render an entire song out of a prompt. So that's a tremendous help for content creators, vloggers, or agencies. So content creation is still number one. Fast coming up second is this concept of creating assistants. If you have, for example, in a BPO, we spoke about agent assist before. Now you're having all sorts of assistants, helping back office and front office with various tasks, particularly tasks where you need to aggregate a lot of information like documents, chats. All of that can be instantly summarized. I'm sure you've attended a meeting where there's a virtual AI just taking notes of what people are saying, and suddenly you have your meeting minutes done. So content, assistants. And then the third, I think the interesting emerging use of it is really, retooling the workflows you have, let's say in a BPO. Because now that, let's say you have agentic agents doing particular tasks, again, this is where the job loss discussion comes into play. You can now move people from, relatively repetitive work to maybe high value work. But again, the idea here is it's not necessarily complete displacement, but figuring out, let's say out of a 20 task workflow, maybe 10 of that can be done by the agent. And then the remaining 10 is done by humans.
Allowing the agent to perform more,
Yes.
or at least be more
Productive.
Doc, I had a question. You mentioned the use of agentic AI to be one's assistant, right? Does that assistant learn as it gets, as it develops this working relationship with its user? Does it get smarter? Do you develop some kind of working relationship with this agentic AI assistant?
There are two ways to approach this concept of learning. One, the easiest approach is you actually force information kind of into the brain of the agent. It can be as simple as uploading a document, or if you're creating a custom GPT. Okay, every time you answer this question, I want you to read this book or this document. So this is you feeding the agent with information. But then the second approach is, unless you specifically toggled the agent not to remember what you talked about, as you keep interacting with the agent, it learns a lot about you. There was actually this cool prompt that I found where you literally ask Gemini or ChatGPT, tell me what you know about me, in so many words. And it's actually sometimes creepy to realize exactly how much these tools have learned about you just by looking at your past chats. And in a way that also flags questions about privacy and security later. But that's already inherently a feature of the agents. And the big change has been literally the amount of information they can store. Before, you were limited to maybe, so they call it tokens, no? So many thousands of tokens. Now the default capacity of these agents is millions of tokens, literally an entire library.
So there's unlimited capacity and there's no such thing as fatigue.
Practically, yeah.
Right.
So the more you talk to these agents, the more they remember what you talked about, and in theory, that makes them adjust to you. It's not too far away from how Spotify remembers what you listen to.
Right.
And then a new playlist keeps booting up every time you listen to music. It's similar to that.
Right. Let's talk about the risks then in the usage of agentic AI. What are some of the potential pitfalls, Doc? And how do you think we as society, government, private sector, how should we incorporate the ethical use of AI, in our policies, in education, and closer to IT BPM, in the training of our current and future workforce?
I think one risk that people don't even think of, I occasionally think about, is over-dependency. Because once you start integrating AI, and many people have, into your day-to-day, your workflow, you tend to be quite complacent. It's no different from you no longer travel without consulting Google Maps or Waze, not realizing that these apps can be wrong occasionally. And those are fairly simple AI.
Okay.
Now you're in the office, you don't check the spelling of emails anymore, you don't check the grammar, you assume this came out of the bot. So over-dependency is one. Then you go to the opposite side where it's malicious use, especially when it comes to the media aspect of AI. I mean, not too long ago, there were these controversial videos that were political that went around.
Right.
A lot of people got duped by that, even though at closer inspection, they were obviously fake. So we're now in an era where video and images are basically untrustworthy by default because they could have been generated by AI, And then probably on the third front that I would flag, although this is kind of two-sided, we don't have laws that can police this stuff. There's no Privacy Act that mentions AI. There's no Cybercrime Act that mentions AI. And yet, you could use AI to perpetrate privacy and cybercrime. Although I just saw literally 2 days ago that apparently one of the first 20 bills in this new Congress includes an AI Act and a Cybersecurity Act. So maybe not too long from now we'll have those laws, but currently we don't have any. And so what happens if you have abuse? How do you prosecute, or how do you complain? Will the police even know how to help you? I mean, that's a concern.
So nothing seems to, I guess in the immediate future, this will remain to be a risk that we should be cognizant of. Any recommendations on what we can do now?
I think it just puts pressure to companies and even individuals to impose their own code of conduct and ethics. I mean, for people, it's a free-for-all. You can use whatever AI for whatever you want. But the moment you start going into the public domain, you publish stuff or you use it in your work, then you're now subject to reputational risks. And you don't want to be the company accused of, using AI for malicious, ends by your customer or violating their privacy. You may not even know you're violating, privacy. Another issue is copyright. With all of these AI images and videos coming out, you might accidentally be violating copyright by generating an image of some trademark. And even our copyright law is, doesn't even mention AI. It's kind of a gray area at the moment.
So I want to move to the training of the IT BPM industry workforce. We've all heard about eBet, and I know you have some opinions, Doc, on how eBet is different from the existing suite of TESDA training programs.
Yeah, so I've been very involved with TESDA activities for several years already. I was an instructor. I've also vetted competencies. I think I wouldn't be saying any, there wouldn't be any disagreement if I said the TESDA process, although it's good, it's really for upskilling, can take some time. If you applied for accreditation, it can take some time. So eBet, when I first heard about it, even before the IBPAP started promoting it, I thought that was an interesting life hack. So in summary, traditionally TESDA would fund training providers, and they would upskill workers for them to find a job. But then so many bottlenecks happen there, like what are the skills, who has to write them, who are the trainers, someone has to apply. So in the process that, just getting a training program rolled out can take forever actually. But for eBet, it's an interesting life hack the way I would understand it. The funding now goes to employers.
Yes.
Train your own people. And I feel on the one hand that's great, because let's face it, BPOs already train their employees. They're some of the best in-house training providers out there because it's very structured, very standardized. But then I had a question about, to really move the needle in terms of job creation, and you're only training internally, there has to be some creativity to that. So I had the fortune of attending an eBet briefing by IBPAP and so many other institutions. And what I realized is, eBet can actually help if we find a way of using it to widen the recruitment funnel for a BPO. 2 ways. One is you can train like lower end, quote unquote, staff to upskill to higher end labor. And then thereby you now vacate all of those frontline entry level roles. So by default, you can accept more people. And that also helps kind of address an interesting issue. There's going to be a management shortage with not just with BPOs but across the board soon, because a lot of our leader types or potentials are also leaving the country for better work abroad. So we can use eBet to develop that layer. Great. But then we were discussing, and just to be very specific, this is higher level, higher value work like software engineers, data analysts, and oftentimes these are not entry level jobs at the BPO world. You need some high degrees, training, and so many years of experience. But what if we could craft an eBet program that targets those skills specifically? And then in return, this is where the industry needs to come in. The industry can now widen and loosen their criteria. Let's say everyone from Accenture to Cognizant, all these big BPOs, they actually have very detailed training material for data analytics, for example. Would they be confident hiring someone who went through that program but loosen up on credentials? No need for college diploma.
We've been talking about this shift, no, to skills-based.
Skills-based.
Rather than credentials-based. But what strikes me about eBet is really its customization and flexibility. We could talk more about this, but right now we're going to have to take a short break. Tech Week, we'll be right back. Please stay with us. You're back on Tech Week. We continue our conversation with Doc Ligot. He is the chairman of the AI Ethics and Safety at the Philippine AI Business Association. Doc, my next question has to do with our local businesses here who may be considering investing in automation and AI tools. Now, what are some of the key metrics that they should develop and look at so that they could measure their ROI, their return on investment?
I think the ROI question has always been around from day one. Every time you have IT, for example. But one interesting insight I picked up talking to a CFO is that we all say productivity and cost management, but in reality, costs never really go down. Headcount never really goes down. Unless there's a crisis. What you need to be looking at is what we call throughput. Yes. Like for every 10 people, are they still doing the equivalent of 10 people work? But through AI, and not just limited to AI, but other types of automation, if you can expand that throughput, that's really the efficiency you're looking for. Because let's face it, the industry, let's talk about IT BPM, it continues to grow. We're still growing at a healthy clip. But are the costs growing as fast as the revenue? If we can fix that, flatten the cost line, accelerate the revenue line. That's how you can measure ROI. And I think AI has been around long enough that there are some companies already achieving that kind of ROI. Some of them have even been your guests. They talk about conservatively a 20x return on the investment they're making. But it requires this, in a way, a change in attitude. Because oftentimes you assess, let's say, IT contracts on the basis of absolute cost, not necessarily on, okay, if I'm willing to spend, let's say, just round number, $1 million, how does this improve my throughput if I have like a $20 million revenue base? Just a 10% increase on that is already double what I invested in the IT. I think you rarely get to that level because finance, IT, from experience, don't really have that nice working relationship. Procurement is in the middle. So I feel that AI evolving as fast as it is requires a different kind of cadence and agility within companies. So make sure your CFO, your CIO, and your vendors are talking together and talking about not absolute cost, but throughput.
So AI being co-owned by the entire organization, not just finance, not just HR, not just operations.
Yeah, and most of the time, at least from what I've seen, it's the business units who really drive that if they're given enough empowerment and ownership. Because they stand to benefit if their throughput improves. Their performance reviews are better, they get promoted. Oftentimes, at least in the fringe cases, if it's limited to one unit or worst case scenario, it's limited to IT, it just becomes another, light that you buy or another laptop. It cannot work that way.
So the ideal metrics for measuring the success of AI should not be limited to cost.
It's throughput and time to value. And obviously, this stuff takes time to gestate. Let's say a typical project. You can't be looking for returns like on day 1 or day 10, but they have to be defined when these things are going to come back.
And when you say throughput, you're also referring in the context of IT BPM or BPO. the capabilities, of the organization.
Yeah, there was a conversation I had in Cebu with actually a person who was your guest recently, Sean of EXO. And one of the presentations he had was headcount is kind of outdated as a
Yes.
measure of performance. It's output. So you can connect the dots. Okay, maybe I'm hiring 10 more people, 10% growth, but I'm achieving 400% in terms of the top line. These are things that we should be looking at. Obviously, it depends on the use case, but that's how I would.
And in the
kind of box it
context
in.
of BPO, it's not just the number of jobs, to your point, but it's really revenue. And
value.
revenue per employee.
Yeah, value to your customer. And it can be many things. Like maybe, again, looking at absolutes kind of boxes the conversation. But what if you made your customer stickier by like 20 times? Your attrition falls. These are things normally, I don't think IT talks about attrition as much as they should. So these are the new metrics that need to come into play.
I just wonder, Doc, how can we convince the government that the number of jobs becomes less of an important metric? That's going to be a long haul conversation. But I agree. It's all about capability, value, and in your word, throughput. So next question, Doc. As we wrap up this conversation, is really for leaders in local organizations, who are under pressure to justify any investments made in AI. What other advice can you give them about balancing, this need for immediate ROI with expectations thereof, with the more important longer-term value that AI can deliver? What advice would you give these companies?
Yeah, I think the thing, well, at least to me, obvious thing staring us in the face is when we talk upskilling. It's always limited to the kind of the rank and file, the workers. But leaders need upskilling too. And the upskilling they need is kind of on these strategic issues. What's my cost of investment? What's my ROI? Design thinking, how do I retool processes? There's not enough of that conversation I hear, at least in my space. Leaders don't seem to be interested, too busy to learn about this. It's not just learning about how AI works. I mean, remove AI, you would have had the same debate about big data, analytics, even blockchain once upon a time. How do you transform a business? And it has to do with exactly what value you give your customer. It starts there. If your customers are buying your stuff, it's because they like your stuff, because the quality is good. I once had another conversation with a client a long time ago. Where does your cash get stuck? You're paying out money in terms of sales and marketing. You don't get that money until you get a proposal and you PO, and then you invoice for your services. And then at the end of the day, you have to collect that money. So somewhere along the line, the money gets stuck. These are the things your CEO and your CFO would like to understand, not really what's the latest in agentic and what's the speed and the memory. So if you can connect whatever you're about to do with AI to one of those issues, guaranteed approval. But again, it takes time to learn that. I'd say anyone working in any business will only pick that up maybe after a decade, once you've seen enough of your business processes. So what about those people who are managers to be, leaders to be? We need to educate them. So I think upskilling for leaders.
That was a very pragmatic example. Using AI to solve these very fundamental but important problems. And you said that where are these payments and cash stuck?
Yeah, because
So
it's a massive investment. And I mean, you can do accounting to capitalize it, etc. Accountants will have fun with that. Ultimately, your business only grows if you're, again, back to throughput, money out versus money in. So it's not necessarily cost reduction, to quote accounting, it's cost income ratio. How much dollar do I get back for every dollar I put in the business? And by default, your business has already a positive ratio, right? How do you boost that ratio better?
Excellent point. We could talk on this topic for a very long time, Doc, but that is all the time we have. That will be a wrap for this week's Tech Week. A huge thank you, Doc, for sharing your valuable insights with us. The future is being built right now, and conversations like these help us decode the future and navigate what is next. Join us again next week as we dive into another game-changing story shaping technology, business, and innovation. Until then, stay curious, stay bold, and stay ahead. I'm Jack Madrid, and you can catch BNC on Free TV Channel 31 and on Signal Channel 24. Thank you for watching BNC, the Billionaire News Channel, always on top.